on to Manuela Sedvartaite, who is Innovation Manager at Banco Santander. Manuela is widely recognised for evangelizing new technologies and bringing these into the market. And she's also an activist for women in tech. So really looking forward to hearing from her today. She's going to be talking about something I think has been brought up a few times already today, which is that issue of trust. I'll hand over to you, Manuela.
Thanks a lot. Hope everyone can hear me well. Yes, so my name is Manuela. I work for Banco Santander. Today, I'll be speaking about digital trust. So the other speakers today sort of covered onboarding, identity, KYC. Stephen spoke about design thinking, which I personally am a big fan of, and I think especially large corporates need a little bit more of it. Yeah, so digital trust, I'm just going to try to share my screen. As products and services across industries increasingly go digital, the need to prove one's identity becomes crucial to access them safely. And opening a bank account requires verification. The gaming industry has been sort of struggling to verify identities and age groups. The health industry needs it to thrive. Its mission to increase access to health services, and the usage of physical evidence and face-to-face verification continues to be a dominant form of identification in many industries, but may not always be possible, right? This is especially true in the case of the social distancing necessitated by COVID, and a lot of the big companies that had sort of very rigid procedures now need to think differently of how they could implement better customer services. I wanted to touch upon, I think digital identity is the topic that is a lot more sort of popular and more well heard of, but I really like the term digital trust because it encompasses sort of a lot of the other topics, right, which could be the channels and the journeys, onboarding, offboarding, authentication, etc. And trust really gives the meaning about the confidence that we want our customers to have when conducting transactions online, right? They have to be safe, they have to be secure, and we really strive to sort of enable that sort of experience. Now, why do we think digital trust is important? What is the problem, right? Well, it's actually quite complicated, right? We can't always trust people on the other end of the internet or on the other end of the transaction. The costs are tremendous, right? If you look at the numbers, it's like $9 billion annually, $8 billion annually on AML. KYC, everything compliance related, costs a lot of money to a lot of the corporates. And at the same time, I think McKinsey did a research that if we could enable digital trust solutions, we could actually unlock the value of 3% of a country's GDP, right? So there is enormous opportunity to sort of improve, reduce the cost, and invest into something that's longer lasting. The one other thing I wanted to touch upon is trust. There's been done multiple research identifying that people don't really trust technology and technology companies. In fact, last year, one study showed that the trust in technology industry has declined by 6%. So in 2020, which means we are increasing the transactions online, but the trust is only decreasing. Now, the good part is that customers actually do trust the banks with their private data. Now, I know we might not be the best at delivering, the best digital experiences, or we might not be the most innovative companies. However, we do know how to keep people's money safe, how to protect customers' private data. And because we are trusted with it, I think we should use it as a building block and try to, level up and improve our services on something we already built through so many years and generations. So what value could banks bring to the market? Banks are really good at what they do in terms of KYC and strong customer authentication, right? We have very rigid procedures. We follow the best practices. It's very difficult to sort of, try to find ways around our compliance departments. And I think that is something, it might delay us, but it's also something we should try to improve, but at the same time, build upon as a service. And I want to give you one example, a theoretical example about Twitter, just to sort of give you, a vision of what this could be and what this could look like. So, for example, right, you want to create a Twitter account. You go to Twitter, sign up, you put in your name, and you put in the last 4 numbers of your mobile number, right? So you already share a lot less information that you would normally share with any sort of website you want to subscribe to or, log into. The next step you do is you pick your bank. This could be Santander, this could be UBS, BNP, Revolut, whoever it is. You select the bank, and the next step that happens is you get a notification on your banking app. Similarly to now, like if you go to an e-commerce shop and you buy a purchase probably about a limit of X, you get a similar notification and you just confirm it. So just like here, you would accept the verification request from Twitter. Here you see the details. So every relying party, like Twitter, could request different information. In this case, it would be the full name, the country. So you don't actually need to provide your exact address. It's sufficient to provide the country. And it's the same for the age, right? You don't need to provide your your date of birth to different websites, because sometimes all they really care about is, oh, you're above 18, or if you're a gaming site, maybe above 21, etc. You confirm that, and it's done, right? Congratulations, you are verified, Paula Garcia Serrano, and you can move on and log into your Twitter account. So there is a basic account, there's a famous verified account, and then you have the new certified account. Now, this is really helpful for Twitter, because Twitter, it sort of assures that it's not a computer running in the background. There's not a troll. It's a really big problem for them. So for them to have some sort of verification system to know that this is a real person and this is who they claim to be, is actually very useful. At the same time, this is just one example, right? There are so many others we can pick from the industry. For example, verifying identity of large payments, right? When you send a payment to somebody, you want to make sure that the person receiving it is actually who they claim to be, or maybe even just to know it is an actual person. Confirming identity within digitally signing legal documents. Today we could sign documents via DocuSign, but do you really know who's signing it? In this case, you could actually make a request to somebody logs in via the bank, so you really know that the person signing it is the one signing it. Other examples could be, renting an apartment, booking a hotel, or maybe checking into a hotel. There are various sort of HR applications that could be used. So, there are so many businesses, and, most of the businesses need to know who their customers are. So this would be sort of a great opportunity of verifying that and guaranteeing that the person on the other side is who they claim to be. Just very briefly, so this is applicable for consumers, but also SMEs, right? You could also, for example, validate payments. So if I initiate a payment, if it's a very large transactions, maybe I would like my boss to or somebody from the company verify it. And again, sign a legal contract that I've already mentioned earlier. Now the technology, how exactly does it work? All right, so there is the relying party. So it could be Twitter, it could be an e-commerce website, right? It could be really any party that provides you with a service. And then you are the owner of the identity. If you go to the website and you, for example, want to rent a car. Now the car rental company needs to know who you are, right? They would normally, ask for your documents. So now what you can do is okay, you can verify yourself and fill out, the questionnaire that they would give you, or you can say, I can verify myself via the bank, or another verifier. It doesn't have to be a bank. And then the bank sends a credential to the relying party to confirm that, yes, it's your identity. They could also potentially request some sort of, are you actually able to pay for the car if you rent it, etc., etc. Depending on the business model, the relying party might or might not pay an amount of money to the verifier. So this depends on the transaction. For example, if this is a small basic verification, it could be for free. But if it's, a larger amount or a more important verification, or potentially, there's insurance on top of it, then there could be, fees involved. And the new type of data custody service. I think this concept, those who've been in the digital identity space, I think probably have heard about things like digital wallets or data vaults, where customers could hold the data, not just identity, but also things like certificates from their school, university, previous employment, etc. And I find this very interesting because, I hope this is part of the future and the not too far future. So, for example, the government could be really the provider of your identity, right? You could verify, the government could verify, yes, this is your passport number, you are who you claim to be. For example, if you look at employers, this could be quite useful. If tomorrow I'm deciding to change my job and go work for, I don't know, Amazon or any other bank or whatever it would be, they would, first of all, they would have to identify me as a person, right? So in the old, at least, before COVID, you would actually, in most cases, would have to go in with your passport, and the HR would sort of take a copy of it, which is really backwards. So first of all, they need to verify your identity. Then they would reach out to your, universities and previous employers, sort of asking, did you actually work there, et cetera, et cetera. This is a very, long process. It takes a lot of time and resources for the company to do. And it's not a pleasant experience for the user either, because it's usually quite lengthy. It gets delayed. People ask questions, and it's just not something anybody really wants to do. So this could actually really ease the process and, enable much faster communication between parties. Now, how do the banks actually benefit from it, right? The banks could generate additional revenue based on the transactions they share. You also build much closer and tighter relationships with your customers, which is very important. You can improve your AML, KYC, FCC procedures that your compliance department will really thank you for. You reduce the operational costs. You also lower the cost of updating KYC. So, for example, if you moved from New York to California and you've changed your address, there might be quite a few companies or institutions you need to go to and tell them, oh, I have moved. Now, what happens with digital identity, if you would update your bank or whoever your verifier is, you would actually, get it updated, and you can request us, for example, to share that with the relevant parties. So you, first of all, for the user, it saves time, and for the partners and the institutions, they have the most up-to-date information, which is also a regulatory requirement in most cases. So it's a win-win situation. And the last thing here I wanted to mention is really about sort of the strategic play, right? The big techs are coming into play. Amazon, Facebook, everyone is moving into the financial services sector, providing banking or payment solutions, which I think is great. It's great to innovate. At the same time, I feel like, those companies don't always protect the customer's interests. The personal data is not set first. And I think given, our strategic position, if we innovate and we do it in time, we can create a great business and deliver great service to the customers, protecting and enabling the customers to own the data and only share it with the relevant parties they actually want to share it with, and nobody else. Now, the benefits to the Reliant parties are, of course, the lowered costs, right? There's a lot of people involved in doing these procedures, which cost a lot of money. It's better data. So, sometimes you might get the data, but you don't actually know if it's real. If you do need to verify, this takes additional time. So here you actually know it is verified already. So you got much better and more up-to-date data. And it's faster customer conversion, right? So if you are doing a sale, or for example, you're onboarding a new employee, this can actually take 2, 3, 4 weeks, if not more than a month. This you can do, in a matter of a couple of minutes or hours, depending on the use case. Now, this is actually not, we're not inventing anything new here. This has existed in different parts of the world, and one example is Sweden. So Bank ID is an electronic identification system in Sweden. It's very well adopted and widely used in the country. The average person in the Nordics uses Bank ID 162 times. This is basically every other day, every 2 days. I'm personally from Lithuania, and we have a very similar system. So, for example, if I go back and I need to get a paper on my property, I go into the government website and I log in via my bank, and I can retrieve information that I like. Similarly now, for example, for COVID, if I want to do a test, for example, I want to register for a PCR test, which by the way is free in Lithuania. I don't know why London has such ridiculous prices for those tests. So I go to the website, I say, I want to do a test. I automatically get routed to log in via my bank. I log in, I register, and it's done. I don't need to fill out any forms. I don't need to provide any data. Everything is connected. Everything works. It's very simple and easy. The one thing is we really need, multiple parties to sort of collaborate on this. And this brings me to the main challenge, which is adoption. To increase the collaboration among parties, we've been working together with the Open ID Foundation. Now, you all know Open ID. Every time you log in into Google or Facebook or Twitter, you use the Open ID standard. It's used more than 2 billion times a day. And here we want to leverage the same process, but to use the bank as a verifier instead, for example, instead of a technology company. And Santander has extended the way the Open ID session tokens are shared and the information that is included in it. So through the assertion claims, you can determine who the person is and what information the person wants to share. The question would be, why use Open ID? It focuses on customer privacy. It is an industry-wide standard. It is scalable, and it is a collaborative effort. How do we evolve on top of the Open ID standard? So we defined and designed security profiles, which is a way to secure an end-to-end exchange of messages. So similar to what Open Bank is doing today, to share the account information. We also introduced new concepts like the level of assurance. So saying this data has been assured by the government, by the bank, by the other trusted party. We also included assertion claims. So that's a way to query for identity. For example, you can query someone is above 18 or if somebody has sufficient funds in their account. And we also added things like proofs and evidence. So this might sort of eliminate in the future, but currently we could share provided documents to back up assertion claims if required. We also launched things like the Digital Hackathon. All of these things I'm talking about are open source. We work very closely with the open source community. We want this to be adopted and used by the community. The more, the merrier. We want the big guys, the small, medium companies, and individuals to be involved in this. And we're really open and transparent about all the activities we are doing. So we've also built a few working sessions and demos. One is with the UK Lottery. The other one is an HR demo. We can see it will be a massive market and it will need to be collaborative. The banks will need support, but the Reliant parties will also need support, and there will be many consumer applications. So there is a lot of opportunity to take and create value. Now, another thing I wanted to talk about is our Santander effort with the IIF. The International Institute of Finance is an organization that brings more than 500 largest financial institutions together. Santander, together with the IIF and the Open ID Foundation, created the Open Digital Trust Initiative. The idea behind the initiative is to create a framework for a new digital trust marketplace. In that marketplace, we expect key things to be standard. For example, very importantly, the individual should own all of their personal information. They should have control over their identity, and they should be able to move that information securely between different organizations and different parties. These are things that we are doing in the open source space, so that everyone can participate. And I am certainly welcoming everyone to join. There are a huge number of organizations involved in the process. And, this is an example of the beginning of a large standard taking place. And it's very early stages, but I think that is exactly what makes it so exciting. I hope you all look at this as an opportunity. This possibility to safely claim who we are will impact how we live and how fast the world economy can recover. So that's it from me today. I'm happy to take any questions now.
Thanks so much, Manuela. And if anyone does have any questions, please do type them in the Q&A. One thing I thought what you said was really interesting was around the commitment to partnerships and the fact that, we can't kind of achieve this as one organization. How important has it been to plug in with the right partners at Santander, and how have you gone about that process?
So the way we look at it is we don't necessarily need to pick partners, right? We've been working with different banks, and we obviously, if we want to enable, verification via banking, we need to make sure the biggest players are there, but we don't specifically pick it's Barclays over UBS or the other way around, right? We want everyone to participate, because the more participants we have, the better we can verify our customer base, and the more customers can use it, right? So we need the banks to be participating in order for this solution to actually be, complete. And this initiative has been going on for a couple of years, and I think banks really like to be competitive in this space, but I think what we really need to understand, the competition can start afterwards, right? Who will provide a better customer journey, right? If I have two bank accounts, maybe the bank, maybe the user will use one bank over the other. But I think when we talk about, the really foundation, we want everyone to participate, and we want everyone to do their best to offer and, build a really sort of robust solution for the market.
Certainly, yeah, it's very important to work together, and it's good to see that banks, I think, over the past few years have kind of shifted a bit to that collaborative mindset, certainly in Santander and others. Another question I had was around, you spoke a lot about at the beginning about how few people actually have trust in tech companies at the moment when it comes to their data and their identity. Do you think that's something tech companies can help to solve over the next few years, or do you think it will take partnering with a bank or another business that's already trusted?
We see it all over the news, right? It keeps coming up, and it's not coming up in a bright light, right? There are leaks. The companies don't handle the data responsibly, and I think they should improve their procedures, right? They should behave differently, and they should have to make sure that their systems are in place. At the same time, I know that I think there's space for everyone. We as banks, we've been doing this, generation after generation, and that's at the core. We might not be the most agile companies, but I think protecting our customers is our first priority. And I think that's something the customers realize and value. And that's why I think banks still have a lot of potential in the future.
Certainly. Well, thank you so much, Manuela. It's been really interesting to hear a bit about that journey and how you've connected with so many other organisations who kind of hopefully have the same wish to rebuild that trust.